Price of the ticket, which we just saw, so please join us, Karen. And joining her in conversation is Dr. Rich Blint, who, as you've heard, is one of our foremost scholars on James Baldwin. He is also has many titles, but the one that we chose today is co-editor of a special issue of African American Review on James Baldwin, as well as a research associate in the Department of English at the University of Pennsylvania, who will talk to us a little bit more about this incredible film that we just watched, and also the work that they do and the inspiration of James Baldwin.
Thank you, thank you. Karen, your mic is right behind you. Good afternoon, how are we feeling? Are we holding up, yes? Can we have another round of applause for that amazing documentary?
Thank you.
It's on, it's on. I mean, one of the things I want to begin by saying is that I meant to make a little bit of remarks, but I'm going to right into questions, but I'm going to say something first. Is that I viewed this film on VHS. I'm that old, yes, people. In libraries over and over again. And I was wondering, just in terms of the power of the film, the kind of linearity of the film, the emotionality of the film, the intimacy that's evident in here. I mean, that was done with a great deal of love, you know? And I've always wondered who Karen Thorson is. This is Karen right here. And Karen and I have known each other for almost 20 years now, I think. But getting close. Getting close. We won't say how much. But one of the things that is striking to me, and I say almost linear, is because you take us through his life and you jump back and forth to that Kenneth Clark interview quite a bit. But I guess the first question I have for you is about his death. We're starting at the end for 1 second, right? Not for 1 second, but I'm curious about what your sense was, because I know a little bit about how you said about the film, but my curiosity has to do with premature Black death, right? You know, David Baldwin in the film, you might have heard him says, you live so long, you have to fight all the time. But Baldwin did not live that long. He lived a short life, 63 years old, 1924 to 1987. He lived incredibly intensely. He smoked, drank himself to death, attempted suicide several times. But what I want to know is, I know you and him collaborated in the very beginning. And could you tell our audience and remind me a little bit about how this project came about?
Way too premature. There's no doubt about that. I first started working with James Baldwin because I was working with a film company, the Maysles Brothers, who specialized in cinema verite. And I knew about James Baldwin because I'd first been assigned to read Notes of a Native Son in college. And he was talking about identity, and it affected me so deeply that when I got involved with filmmaking, I first started wanting to be a writer. And then when he wrote about always wanting to have a 16 millimeter camera, and he gradually got involved in filmmaking as he became more and more renowned, interviewed, and then his first encounter with cinema verite, I'm going way back, but Take This Hammer,
1963, San Francisco, KQED.
That was his first foray, really going into the streets with a team where he wasn't simply on camera, but he was experiencing life being filmed. And then he got involved with various filmmakers, going to meet the man. I heard it through the grapevine. There are many things that could be said about these films, but he still felt he hadn't quite achieved cinema verite. So when I approached him, really, I couldn't, nobody, when you say they say he became a pariah, there's so much truth to that. He was not in favor. He may have been teaching near the end of his life, but he was not being taught. And he just, there was a lot of misunderstanding about what his message had been and should be. And so I reached out, where's James Baldwin now? He'd make a great subject for a film. And it turned out he was teaching up at UMass, and we started communicating by phone and by fax. Remember faxes? And then we finally met. And quite honestly, I met with him only one day in my life, a very extraordinary day that changed me permanently.
1984,
Six.
a year before he died.
Well, yeah, it was in the beginning of 1986. So we met and liked each other. And he ended up wanting to do this film with me. It was a very different project. It was going to be called, and you may know this title from Raoul Peck's film, I'm Not Your Negro. He was working on his next book, which was to be called Remember This House, and it was to be a portrait of Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X.
The lives and murders of those three, which turned into I'm Not Your Negro.
Although that I'm Not Your Negro actually is even more about the Devil Finds Work, which is an extraordinary and really important leap.
From 1976. It begins with those first 30 pages.
Yes, but in any case, so we figured out what kind of a film we were going to make, and we were basically going to follow Jimmy throughout the South during the researching of his next book, during his teaching, during his work, and this is what mattered most importantly to him at the end of his life was the young people, the next generation. And he and I figured out that we would follow him around, but that he would also be on camera, only 3 different instances in interview form. So that's not particularly cinema verite, but he very much wanted to speak to the children whom he'd known since infancy. The daughter of Malcolm X, the son of Martin Luther King, the son of Medgar Evers. He'd literally known them since birth, and they were now in their late teens, early 20s, and he wanted to ask them about the subject. When you see him on screen saying, how much time do you want for your progress? Well, it's that's what he wanted to talk to them about, only he had a very specific way he was going to do it. The first question he was going to ask them was it worth it that your father was assassinated? And we never got to film those interviews. We never got to film that question or hear that answer because he died on December 1st, 1987, prematurely.
Prematurely, indeed. One of the things I wanted to mention and wanted to ask is that there are a number of films on James Baldwin, right? Take this time, as we mentioned, Baldwin's, not N-word, but Baldwin's Nigger by Horace Ove, 1968, at the West Indian Cultural Center in London. The Baldwin-Buckley debate, Meeting the Man in 1970, 1971 with Jack Kazan, Pat Hartley, Dick Fontaine's work in 1982. All those works are set in a certain time frame. And you give us a full sweep. And what you do, because years later I discovered that you take clips from both of them. And when you do so, I mean, I think masterfully, almost seamlessly. And I've never said this to you before. I've watched this film maybe 50 times, if not more, is that you know exactly when to stop. You know exactly what to choose. And it adds to the kind of cinematic power of the film. So tell me about how you went out. It's the Paley Center, the Performing Arts Library. How did you get your hands on all those clips? I mean, that must have been an ordeal. I've talked to Raoul about this, and it's a lot.
It is a lot, but I have to pay tribute to Bill Miles, who is a filmmaker who passed in 2013, but he is co-producer of this film, and we weren't working together on the original film, Remember This House, but once Jimmy died, well, that whole project felt hopeless because you can't follow someone around with a camera crew when they're gone. But what we did realize is that, well, time for a quick story?
Oh, please, please.
It's just that on the morning that James Baldwin died, I got a call from a friend of mine who was a colleague at Maisels Films, and she said, Karen, did you hear? Did you hear? James Baldwin died in France last night. And this was obviously a huge shock, particularly because the last conversation I'd had with Jimmy a few months before was I'd called him in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, and he said, Karen, I know why you're calling. Don't worry. I mean, it was a longer conversation, but don't worry, we'll be filming by the end of the year.
He was lying to you.
No,
No?
we were filming by the end of the year, and he was so much part of it. And so one of the things that happened is we decided to film the funeral. We had to persuade the government's PB and American Masters PBS to share the money that they had agreed to invest in the making of the film Remember This House and let us film the funeral. And then once we filmed the funeral and showed them how much this mattered, and you started by asking about his death, and what is so important to me is all the time that I was working with Jimmy on Remember This House, I'd ride around in New York taxis, which were a lot more affordable then, and ask the drivers, have you ever heard of James Baldwin? And I was so struck by the fact that literally taxi drivers of all races and colors did not really know much about James Baldwin. And I realized we have to start this film with something that expresses his impact on the world. And the funeral, which was put together by the Baldwin family members, but also by the Baldwin scholar Florence Ladd, they opened those gold doors 5 years earlier for Duke Ellington, and they hadn't been opened since, and they opened them for James Baldwin. And the crowd that was there, and the people, the kind of people who were there, that I thought if we open with that, people will at least know James Baldwin must have been somebody important, right?
No, it's amazing. What is lamentable to me that he didn't see you all the way through filming, which is heartbreaking and would have produced something different, not necessarily better. What is interesting to me, and I'm sure salient to you all gathered here this afternoon, is thinking about James Baldwin's work and his refusal of categorization, right? His insistence that this myth and legend, this fiction of race, which is our millstone around our necks, the thing that has terrorized the national imagination for so long, and is in fact a human disaster. He says in the film, as long as you think you're white, there's no hope for you. As long as you think you're white, I'll be forced to think I'm black. And here comes Karen Thorson, right? And so I'm wondering, in terms of Baldwin's decades-long, he was writing in the 9th grade, so it's more than 40 years, I think a little bit, professionally in 1948, 49. We don't count the reviews. But what did it feel like you to sidle up to a man who was notoriously troublesome, insistent, angry in a provocative and productive way, and like a dog with a bone? He was really committed to this enterprise. What did it feel like you, for white women, dealing with this famous black man who was abnormally intelligent, right, and so fiercely committed? What was it like for you?
What was extraordinary, first of all, how naive I was. There was a lot I didn't know. I've learned a great deal because of James Baldwin and because of all the encounters throughout the world, that the richness that has brought me. But at the time, I was simply, I wanted to be a writer. I'd read about him. I cared about identity. I was confused about my own identity. I was disappointed and frustrated with my own nation. And here he was expressing these things. And I didn't realize how much distance separated us, because he taught me, first and foremost, how much common ground there was. And I believed that in a naive way, and I still believe it, because James Baldwin, you list all of the different adjectives that describe him accurately, but I would say I would add consistency. He was consistent.
And insistent.
And insistent. And so when we set out to make this film, and I mentioned Bill Miles, who had made a film called I Remember Harlem, a 4-hour series that was on PBS, and it was all archival footage. You wouldn't see the images of Harlem from those early years if it weren't for Bill. For wonderful reasons, he became an archivist, gathering bits of discarded footage that he found when he had a job just adding filler to film. And it turned out the filler that was supposedly discarded, that kept images and soundtracks separate, he'd hold them up to the light and he found these amazing images. So one of the things that happened after we filmed the funeral, and PBS said, yes, go ahead with this, well, we thought it would be a biography, but we weren't sure quite what. And we had no idea that all that archival material was out there. Well, Bill Miles agreed to join the project. And so together we hired 15 researchers around the world, and we found out that all of these people had been inspired by James Baldwin, and who had taken time off from their actual, money-earning lives to spend a weekend or an afternoon or a week filming him in some of his own life. And so that's where the female, I used to be a journalist and I did like research, but there was so much I didn't know and there was so much I got to learn.
That's powerful. I have 2 more questions, and I promise we'll open it up to the floor. The first question I have is, both in the middle of the film and toward the end, Baldwin believes in something he calls a new Jerusalem. I believe, the saying that, we'll somehow, trust each other, and we'll achieve this new Jerusalem. But the price is enormous, he says. And, we haven't gotten the will to pay it. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. What's your interpretation of that quotation, along with a similar one that says, love has never been, for Meeting the Man, 1970, love has never been a popular movement. Remember that one? And no one's ever really wanted to be free. The freedom he's saying is the freedom of categorization, right? Baldwin says every human being is an absolute miracle, but one has to protect themselves from the disasters they've become. And if that's not American life right now, I don't know what is, right? And we have some work to do a couple months from now, by the way. Is it a month? Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, no. 31 days. Lord, forgive me. Oh, my God. But no, 5th of November. You know what you have to do. But my point is, those 2 propositions, love has never been a popular movement, and that he believes that with all this ferocity, with all of this intentionality about change, transformation, and overhaul, he still believed that we can love each other. It's phenomenal, isn't it?
It is extraordinary, and I felt that from the first moment I read him, the first moment I met him, but more importantly, the first time I met his mother. About those 2 quotes, I will say, the love has never been a popular movement was said in the fierceness of his time when he was definitely not in favor. And he was feeling that on a personal level as well as a world global level. As for the New Jerusalem, this is something I believe his mother taught him, and he had perhaps in his soul that he nurtured that and didn't squash it like so many we've heard on the panels today about lack of self-esteem and so many of the difficulties we're facing. But he never lost that message. And I wanted to just address the Schomburg because so many things happened here in the history of the making of this film. One of them was when we showed the film in its rough cut form, before we had the credits on the end of the film, but we had the body of the film was there. So we showed it, I guess it was downstairs, which is where the auditorium used to be. And I remember that James Baldwin's mother was there, Bertus Baldwin, in a wheelchair, and before the screening, and of course I was terrified. How would this be received? The Baldwin's sisters and brothers turned out as nieces and nephews. There were a lot of people in that room who mattered a lot to Jimmy, and so I knelt down and I talked to his mother and I said, I hope it'll be okay. I hope you feel that we've done a decent job. And I let her hold on to the 3 stones that I had that David Baldwin had given me after Jimmy died. And he said, here, this is your contract. And I still didn't know how she'd react to the film. And we get to the end of the film, and Bill Miles and Douglas Dempsey and a lot of our filmmaking team, we were all standing in the back of the room. And all of a sudden we hear this keening cry, well, up and out. And I realized that it was Bertus Baldwin. And we just looked at each other in the dark of the room. And what happens when there's no credits on the screen, we already had Jimmy singing, "Oh, Precious Lord." his a cappella voice that we recorded with the late pianist Charles Darden. And so that was echoing through this absolutely pitch black room with Burtis's cry, do we turn off the film? What do you do? And we finally decided to let it play. And then afterwards, here in this building, I went to her and she said, it's okay, Jimmy was in the room.
I listen and something is listening to me.
Oh.
As you enter that, to enter beyond the veil, and him seeing Simone's face, Sonore, at the end of his life. I want to thank you so very much for your hard work. All these years later. A round of applause, please. I have so much more to say, but I want to invite you to both of those microphones if you have any questions for Karen about the film that we can both weigh in on. This is a really remarkable event.
We have a long history, Rich, and I thank you.
Thank you, darling, really.
What you do for Jimmy as well.
Yes, and this
matters
is not
a great deal.
All hagiography. This is just knowing the figure so very well. Thank you. Yes, a question over here.
Hello, Ms. Thorson. I am an aspiring filmmaker myself and write ethnographic fiction. And in dealing with archives and recording narratives, you have to make the decision as to what you're going to divulge and what is between you and the person who's trusted you. What were some of the things that you had to decide? Well, not the things, but were there moments where you had to decide that this is something that I want to keep between us? And how did you come to those decisions? How did you deal with those?
Brilliant question. Thank you.
I think that there are so many things that could be said, but we'll zero in on alcohol. I was concerned with portraying Jimmy as too heavy a drinker, and the other was homosexuality. I was concerned with making that very well known. And so I downplayed images of him drinking, but I left it in with the cigarettes. And later, when we were filming after Jimmy's death, and I asked David Baldwin the question, well, what do you think about the fact that he drank so much and probably died younger than he should have? And he said that was what kept him going. And I never had to complain about that because I knew what he was doing mattered more than how much he was drinking. Secondly, homosexuality. This film was made back, I started working with Jimmy in 1986. He died in 1987. The film was finished in 1989, sooner than I wished. That too was premature, but American Masters wanted to air it on his 61st birthday. And so we had to get it done. But we did manage to find everything possible where he spoke about labels and gender preference and the fact that he'd loved a few men and he'd loved a few women, and that was probably all that saved his life. We wanted so much for that to come through, so I'm very proud of that being included. I'm sad to have lost Toni Morrison, and there's a story behind that. There's so many things that got left out, but you can't fit a lifetime in 87 minutes.
We want to hear the Morrison story, but let's take some questions right here. How are you?
Hi. I just wanted to ask a question, Ms. Thorson. First, I'm grateful to meet you. Secondly, you met James at a very powerful and exciting part of his life in Elmhurst 1 year before his death. And you were so compelled about his vision and how it fit into your own identity and the identity of your country. Now that you know him, now that you've produced this beautiful film that inspires us, what do you think about the critical juncture now in America and how Black people fit into it or are fitted into it? Would you rally more Black people becoming expats?
The Schomburg does not mess around. You hear me? A light question. I mean, Mr. Baldwin says at the end of My Dungeon Shook that he implored James, never leave your country, right? And so just one thing I would like to add for context from the man's mouth himself, but it's a brilliant question right here. What do you think?
Well, you can't, he told us himself, you can't leave your country, you can't leave your home, you better take it with you, otherwise you're homeless. So that, wherever you are raised, you have that as baggage, and you have that, it's formative, and it's a blessing. And he reserved the right to criticize his country because he loved it. But whenever we took this, we've taken this film all over the world, and, you know, in Germany and other countries where, you know, at first they'd react to James Baldwin and his, you know, some people enjoy seeing the United States criticized, can't imagine why. And so they'd revel in that a moment, but then it would come down to their own countries where obviously humanity has not figured itself out. And there are, he firmly and consistently believed that all men are brothers, but that doesn't mean that we have achieved this brotherhood. And my Dr. Angelou, she told me to call her, sorry, with good reason. She said, you know, it's hard to ask someone to be your brother. We all need to do more of that. So it's not really about whether we cross borders or leave a place behind because it is uncomfortable or dangerous. It is about trying to bridge those borders between us.
I mean, can I respond a little bit? But Toni Morrison said in her eulogy at St. John the Divine that that James Baldwin gave her a language to dwell in so powerful she thought it was her own invention. Earlier today, Bettina Love, Dr. Love, suggested, if I think I'm right, Toni Morrison says if you have to be tall because someone is on their knees, you have a very serious problem, right? One has a very serious problem. And so, you know, that rigid verticality she was calling out as being a somehow moral kind of vacuity in a human being trying to make themselves get through this magic and mystery called human living, right? So James Arthur Baldwin, Toni Morrison demanded more ethically and morally from every single one of us. So I think we have to kind of move with that in everything that we do in order to get to that place of transformation and overhaul. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I'd like to just say one other thing. I have lived as an expat for 21 years. I think that James Baldwin could not have been James Baldwin in this climate. I think Tina Turner could not have been Tina Turner in this climate.
Mr. Baldwin always saying, young man, yes.
How you doing? I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about this choice to open with James Baldwin's funeral. I was recently reading the new Alexis Pauline Gumbs book where she was talking about Audre Lorde, and she does a very similar thing, opening with her death. And so I was very interested in that move and the intention behind it.
We didn't know how grand the funeral would be, but it took about 10 days, 8 days to get Jimmy's body back from France, and in that time the funeral was planned. And initially the family had been so beset by press, they were going to keep it to a minimum in terms of filming, and they had allowed, there was going to be a camera for a feed for ABC television to be attached to one of the stone pillars inside St. John the Divine. And then I decided that I was going to gamble that we might be able to get permission to film the funeral, and so we had 3 camera crews standing by, and then I went here in Harlem, the funeral home, Jimmy's body was actually there to be viewed, and the family members were there as well, and so the lines were around the block. It took about 2 hours just to get inside the funeral home, but then David Baldwin was there, and we knew each other because of the collaboration with Jimmy on Remember This House, and he said, go ahead, call your crews. So at midnight, the night before the funeral, we called the crews. They came in, and they were accomplished filmmakers who had worked for TV and news and had an artistic eye, but also knew the famous people. So you saw people at the funeral. You see Stokely Carmichael, you see Bedford Dan, you see Gordon Parks, Sonia Sanchez, Jerome Smith, the members of the family. They were able to pick out the people in the crowd. And so that's part of what made the funeral what it is. The other detail I'll add about the funeral, and I don't know which details struck you, but a lot of people said to us when the film was first released, they watched the film and all these gold crosses and white robes, this whole Episcopal thing didn't feel like James Baldwin. And they heard the drums and they said, oh, these white filmmakers, I bet they added in a layer of African drums to, make it feel more authentic. Well, that was Babatunde Olatunji.
The Babatunde, as you know.
And that was part of the program. And there were other musicians there. That, again, like Toni Morrison, is not on camera. But it's amazing footage. And all of our archival footage that we shot, all of the verite footage that you saw in the film of his home and his, the turkey and things that were shot in 1988 are here in the Schomburg and can be accessed. They're part of the archive here, including the funeral footage.
That's fantastic. We have time for one more question, I believe. It's almost 4 o'clock. Yes, sir.
Kirk Boone. I'm a freelance writer. I have kind of like a hypothetical question for you, Mr. Professor Blint. I was watching the film, and James Baldwin had this. He's going to write this book about these 3 terrible murders. Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King, right? And I question is like, today we have these black figures who are very much ingrained in popular culture in America, from a Barack Obama to a Michael Jordan to a Oprah Winfrey. How would you think James Baldwin would respond to that in his literature? Being through so much, it's hypothetical, but do you think his work, would he be proud of his work? Or would he think it's like not believable what's going on in America?
Thank you for your question. As I said before, Baldwin says to act is to be committed is to be in danger. A number of our billionaire, millionaire black leaders, we can use that term, are ensconced in the political establishment of the Democratic Party, right? James Arthur Baldwin worked outside that as much as possible. He was also given to fame and all the rest. But I think, to be very honest, Mr. Baldwin would find much of these celebrities lacking. Frankly, and he would say so in much the same concise, eloquent way that we saw on this film. So make no mistake, James Baldwin was no Democrat. I'm not saying you should be this time around, but he was, let me be clear, but he was not a Democrat. He's not phone banking. He's telling you something about the operation of American power. That's what he's doing. He's not simply a prophet. His analytical mind is so fierce that no one, including me and you, would escape his analytic prowess. And so what I'm suggesting is that he would demand of Obama, who was intensely compromised, and Vice President Harris, we hope she wins, much more than people are asking of them now. And that's one of the reasons James Arthur Baldwin, who is who he remains, and we're studying him now. David Baldwin says Baldwin wished that after he's gone from here and we're digging through the rubble and the ruins, that we could find something that we could use. And we're using him right now, right? He gave himself over to us and some other people. I'm not sure I'll be in a picket line for Oprah Winfrey. I'm not so sure. So that's my kind of answer to your hypothetical question. And Karen?
Well, I could respond 2 thoughts. One is that when we made the film, we didn't want to make a hagiography, so we tried to enlist people who had been critical of Jimmy while he was alive, and that includes Amiri Baraka and Ishmael Reed. Only when we filmed them, what happened?
They forgot.
Well, so we went to them afterwards and said, well, why did you not choose to echo some of the critical statements you have made about James Baldwin in the past? And they said, well, it's one thing when you're keeping your fellow artists alive, when they're still alive, keeping them to the task, keeping them honest. But when it comes to after they've gone, then it's about legacy. And so how Jimmy would deal with people who are alive, I bet he would bring them to task. But maybe after the fact, it might be something different. I wanted to
Could you come up and ask your
thing.
question, sir?
Okay.
No, we have, it's beyond 4 o'clock, right? Do we have time for one more? Sure, sir. Go right ahead.
Hi, I was wondering, hi, oh, I'm Jephthah. Hi, Karen. Hi, Rich. I was wondering, with the success of this documentary and this film work in your career thus far, are you in any way investing to young Black writers and Black creators so that they have the opportunities to basically not end up drinking themselves, smoking themselves to death?
I have stopped making films of my own, except for re-edits of this film, because I think this is something that I can do that is better. Bill Miles is no longer with us. My co-producer Douglas Dempsey and I have founded something called the James Baldwin Project, and we basically are taking it all over the world and the country, and especially to students, in the spirit of what Jimmy cared about, which is talking to them about our need for progress and what we do share. And this brings me back to something that you said early on in this conversation, Rich. The clip, when we were going through all of the archival clips and trying to decide which pieces tell James Baldwin's story the best, the one that shocked me the most, because it simply had not crossed my mind, is as long as you insist on thinking you're white, I'm going to be forced to think I'm Black. And so bringing that statement and talking to young people about identity is
Well, my question was more about financial investment.
oh, I'm
We're
sorry.
not wealthy. Are you wealthy, my love?
My roof leaks.
No, we wish. I mean, I think
Yeah,
we
I
work
don't
with
know.
organizations who do that kind of work all the time, right?
I just had a question, so that's the answer.
Well, there are two answers, actually. Baldwin 100, Baldwin United, is founded by Trevor Baldwin and the family members, nieces and nephews, and they are working together to raise funds to create a form of a Baldwin recognition of young writers. So there is that. And then there's a young man in Baltimore who went to a high school, and he's now involved in investment banking and real estate, and he has founded something called the Baldwin Prize. And that is being awarded. It's only $100, but it's being awarded to a number of high school students a year based on their essays. So things are happening in Jimmy's name financially. That's just a small
It's
example.
important we talk about it.
We,
Thank
we're,
you.
we're going to use Chair's privilege to ask that we end with the Toni Morrison story.
Oh.
Thank you, Jafar.
This, unfortunately, this is shame on me, my own particular lack of good judgment, I think, because I called Toni Morrison, obviously, after we filmed the funeral, and we did film her wonderful and extremely important eulogy. It is not in the film because she asked me not to include it. And I should not have listened to her. And that phone call, I still hear it. And she said, Karen, I don't like myself on camera. I don't like hearing myself. And I know you're going to interview Maya. She didn't have to call her Dr. Angelou. And I know you're interviewing Mary, but I'm just so uncomfortable with that. And so please, I beg you. And I so regret having listened.
It's downstairs in the archive, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, another good reason to honor this place at the Schomburg, because we have saved all of that here, right? And some of this you can also see in the exhibit. The exhibit is still open, so you can go and see it between panels. And speaking of panels, we're going to thank our panelists. Thank Karen Thornton and Rich Blint. And we will take 5 minutes to turn over the stage, and then we will be treated to our coda by Samia Bashir.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, friends, we are ready to settle in. So I'll ask everyone to find your seats before the cabin doors close. Let's ask the lovely people at the front to find their seats. Thank you so much. Okay. And so we've reached the almost end of a really beautiful day. Yes. And one of the things that my co-conspirator and collaborator, Novella Ford, insists on here at these programs is a coda, that we don't leave here without not wrapping things up, but a moment of reflection and breath and beauty and innovation. And we begin this moment of rest, beauty, and revelation with Samia Bashir. Samia Bashir, it says in the bio, is called a dynamic, shape-shifting machine of perpetual motion. Diego Baez said that, but I would have said that also, right? So I'm going to claim that she is a dynamic, shape-shifting machine of perpetual motion, writing for Booklist. She's a poet, a writer, a librettist, a performer, a multimedia poetry maker whose work, both solo and collaborative, has been widely published, performed, installed, printed, screened all over the world. And I will not read more, it's all in the program. I will simply ask her to take the stage. She's going to present some of her own work, some of Jimmy's work, and then we'll have a brief conversation before we have another bite to eat and a glass of wine and get ready for more beauty and more transformation tomorrow. So here we are, Samia Bashir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for staying here with me this afternoon. I'm really honored to bring us together. I'm gonna do a little spell casting, do a little remembering, do a little bringing of all of us back into the room. I've been here all day. What a day. Right? What a day. In the beginning of the day, Novella reminded us that in the beginning was the Word. That little Jimmy Baldwin was a child preacher, that grown man Baldwin was a child preacher. That Baraka eulogized him as God's black revolutionary mouth. I want to open with a poem of his, James Baldwin's words, when he asked a lover's question. My country, 'tis of thee I sing. You, enemy of all tribes, known and unknown, past, present, or perhaps above all to come. I sing, my darling jewel. Columbia, gem of the ocean. Or as I, a street nigger, would put it, okay, I am your nigger, baby, till I get bigger. You are my heart. Why have you allowed yourself to become so grinly wicked? Do not ask why you have spurned, despised my love as something beneath you. We all have our ways and days, but my love has been as constant as the rays coming from the earth or the sun, which you have used to obliterate me. And now, according to your purpose, all mankind, from the nigger to you and to your children's children, I have endured your fire and your whip, your rope and the panic from your hip, in many ways, false lover. Yet, my love, you don't know how desperately I hoped that you would grow. Not so much to love me, as to know that what you do to me, you do to you. No man can have a harlot for a lover, nor stay in bed forever with a lie. He must rise up and face the morning sky and himself in the mirror of his lover's eye. You do not love me. I see that. You don't see me. I am your black cat. You forget that I remember in Egypt where I was worshipped, where I was loved. No one has ever worshipped you, nor ever can. You think that love is a territorial matter, or racial, yes, where I was worshipped and you were hurling stones, stones which you have hurled at me to kill me, and now you hurl at the earth, our mother, the toys which slain Cain's brother. What panic makes you want to die? How can you fail to look into your lover's eye? Your black dancer holds the answer, your only hope behind the rope, a rope you fashioned usefully. Enough hangs from your hanging tree to carry you where you sent me. And then, false lover, you will know what love has managed here below. Thank you, Mr. Baldwin. Jafari this morning invited us to take a break from doom scrolling and poor reading and despair. We were reminded that this moment's brimming with black hope, black genius, black creativity. We have accessibility. We have tools. We're here in a place that James Baldwin wanted to be, a place that his teachers introduced him to, said Brian Jones. And Bettina reminded us that the lies I was told about who I was, I never would believe. I never would believe. If you love children, they said this morning, you must be prepared to go for broke. I'll read you a poem called Per Aspera. I'm going to give a little mixtape in this mix-up, right? I have poems, we have Jimmy's poems. I have our words and our sharing in our convening here. We'll find our covenant. This poem is called Per Aspera, which means like through struggle. It's normally known with this phrase, ad astra per aspera. It's a Latin phrase, to the stars through struggle. It's on the moon. I think it's the state motto of Nebraska. Sometimes we don't need all the words. Per aspera. Listen. We ain't all well. This world spins designs which madden us, shape us like dough, bake us crisp. There may be those who will crumble us into paving for their own roads. Listen, we mustn't let them, but also love. We aren't all well. We can't all resist as well as we might. We can't all fight enough or at all, and I can't say how we heal. I wish I could. I would. I'll try. Most days, America screams to anyone who will listen how it hates me so much it would rather kill us all than let me live. Is a thing I said today. And also another day. And another day. And another day. Most days, America screams to anyone who will listen how it hates me so much it would rather kill us all than let me live. And Rick said, Jimmy Baldwin wasn't phone baking. But he was doing. Fill it in, but he was doing. Because Jimmy said, if you don't do your work, you're useless. Oof. 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 This is a poem called Nail Hard. As I was saying, your idea of death ain't mine. I'll sprout anyhow. Flourish. Your rotting flesh don't make me know. Never mind. Stretch. Not too long. Just long enough. Just dark-ish growth. Hard as illusions. And furthermore, as I said, your death ain't mine. I sprout anyhow. Your rot, flesh don't make me know. Stretch not too long, long enough. As I said, your death, hard as illusions. And furthermore, and furthermore, and furthermore. The political is our tradition, Baraka said. Jimmy B was in the tradition. August 2nd, 1924. What a day, what a day, what a day, what a day, what a day. Novella said, I believe in the alchemy of us. In our convening, we find our covenant today. The alchemy of us and what we've all cooked up together in here, out there over beverages and bagels, and here sitting side by side. Every bombed village is my hometown. Nadia Al-Ahmed made sure to remind us that James Baldwin said. If we owe each other anything, Marina said, we owe each other the future. We owe each other, as June Jordan said, living room. Need versus debt. What are the terms? What are forms of solidarity that aren't transactional? I want us to really keep holding on to that question. What are the terms? What are the forms of solidarity that are not transactional, that give us living room, that we can build with? And also, I do not regret to inform you that Audre Lorde is not canceled. Something we learned today. Roger reminded us that James Baldwin went to France because he said, I knew I was next, after his friend jumped off the George Washington Bridge. I knew I was next. He needed to save his life. In Turkey, he didn't think he was near his roots, they said, but he was near some roots. A small matter of engineering. The old water tower once stored every drop we lived on. Its walls, dark-capped, bricked beige as supermarket pantyhose. A small matter of engineering. The old water tower once stored every drop we lived on. The old water tower once stored every drop we lived on. Its walls, dark-capped, bricked beige as supermarket pantyhose, still rise erect astride the main drag where our road splits between opposing camps. On this side, everything gone as long as anyone remembers, and winter still cold as it's ever been. On the other, listen. You've always had the broadest swath of the river, friend. Thing is, we're still here. Whatever else you've got left, well, let us stay parched. Go ahead. I dare you. How to see people in their full personhood. And Edwige said, it's good that we are talking about each other's humanity. Humanity. And Jimmy B said about Giovanni's room, ain't no secret. You didn't tell me, I told you. So now what? And that the biblical stories all take place in real places that still exist today. Palestinians are Jesus' people in Bethlehem. We discussed. We discussed how we're getting gassed by the same gas produced here for the both of us. Danger is real, also. Where do we put our names? Where do we put our pictures? Who do we tell where our office lies, or our home? Would Black people be more safe if we didn't speak out in solidarity with Palestinians? Marina asked. I don't think so, Marina answered. I don't think so. Question 1. Who are your people? Hello. Question 2, where is your home? Oh, that's tougher. Imagine knowing exactly where home is. Question 3, how must I change? Imagine, I said, being willing to survive. Imagine. Thinking about the price we pay for safety. And is it real? Is that a thing? Transactional. At Harlem Hospital, across the street from the Schomburg, I don't think I've ever read this poem at the Schomburg, that's hilarious. At Harlem Hospital, across the street from the Schomburg, the only thing to eat is a Big Mac. There used to only be a McDonald's there, you may remember. You just might remember. Still, somehow, we are carousel. We spin bodies to the wall and back. We are woman and man and man and man. We are surgeon and operation. We are everybody we love. We are inside them. We are inside and we are laughing. We are man and we will die too. We know that much. We are our own shadow. We are want of touch. We are woman and man, don't look. We are curvature, look. We are train, we are star, we are big, tiny spiders. We are crawling, we are biting, we are hungry, we are a stopped carousel. We are bodies dropped to the floor. We are shaking. We are our own. Still, somehow, We are carousel. We are laughter. We are the doorway out. We are, again, the doorway in. And Bettina said this morning, I believe black people are the portal, the way through. And then we talked about betrayal by ourselves and each other. Khalil said, it's not broken people that need fixing. It's a broken society that needs repair, replacement. 10,000 books have been banned, Bettina reminded us about today. And are we engaged in a liberatory project or a revolution? When racism becomes not only profitable, she said, but pleasurable. You've been on the Twitter lately? The joy of the troll. That's when I get really scared. That's when I get really scared. The only difference, Khalil relayed to us secondhand, between the crews and the cops is they both have guns, but the cops have badges. If you love children, again, you must be prepared to go for broke. You must be prepared to go for broke. That, again, the political is our tradition. And then that white man asked, Mr. Baldwin, do you ever think you'll write something without a message? I'm going to close with the title poem in this book, Field Theories. It's called Field Theories. Mr. Baldwin, do you think you'll ever write anything without a message? No. Sold for poker chips. Left cold, left thawed, left bent into the yop, ass up. Let be, let air, bones, unknowns, ash everywhere. Curved space, dark breath, dark breath, dark. What? Sold for bluff on blind. Left choked, left down, left bent, left past, catch. How a body grabs a body, hungry. Even Jesus let his baker's dozen fend for themselves once they got to snipping and sipping too comfortably, according to the literature. Jesus, that first bite. It's sharp. It's ache. It's nectar. We'll build a fort and fill it with maple trees gone gaudy, with cobalt wishing stones. We'll crawl inside and imagine how maybe we used to laugh, fuck Orpheus, and fuck them for loving him, for not loving who we love when we're the ones down here rotting in hell. Huh? Huh? Music? Anyone ever really heard us sing? Let me move this. Anyone ever asked? Even so, we sing all day. Even so, we pass our hours whatever ways we can. We know some folk don't listen. Just look and trace. Look, what is a thing of beauty if not us? Bare where a clothespin clips a nose and breath is held until bear it, then keep walking toward light, right? Wait. We'll ask them to name something blue, and maybe they'll say popsicle tongue, broken finger, black eye. Easy enough to say you. Don't. What does anyone out here know of us? How our dar-stained wings hide what ergot saddles we ride, how between our teeth we mash the fur of maritime beasts. Still, some folk never thank us to manifest their pleas, yet what is a thing of beauty if not us? Repeat. Dark breath. Dark breath. Dark things we do as we turn slowly blue. Lead laser dots through another chalk outline. Pick up today's Halloween dress. Cry at commercials. Obey. Pay Defense Department rates for a sandwich. Unremember memorable jingles. Jaw sandwiches that taste just like sandwiches. Figure we can't expect much more than that. Don't. Some slaves only get free enough to crouch in Kentucky foxholes with Cincinnati just over one last swift river. Our own acrid smell finally wakes us. Eras, half woke, slow roll through the wet spot, panic, floor, hard, years. The worst kiddie porn will never say we see bottles, cans, pizza box hotels, crusty burrito bits, razor blades, mirror shards, cat puke, half a joint, shuffled match, broken brick, bloody steps, lit joint, burnt fingers, better. Wash the hair, don't wash the hair. This was me yesterday. Wash the hair, don't wash the hair. Wash the hair, don't wash the hair. Own no time. Late as fuck. Strip the bed, consider the stain, don't. The murk we blow to cool. The slop and bang we curse. The hum of incandescence. The lip burns we nurse. The best skin of our lives. The best skins of our lives. What is a thing of beauty, if not us? Repeat.
What is a thing of beauty, if not us?
Thank you. Thank you all.
There's something philosophical about that, right? Someone talking and not knowing that their mic is not on. We've come to the point, we realize that there may be things left unsaid. We want to say them into the room. We want to take a moment. If you have short comments, short questions of each other, of Samia, who may still be back there, this may be the time for you to air them. But first, I'm going to ask us to take yet another breath together.
And Brittany said, questions, not comments, don't play me.
I think I'm going to start a GoFundMe for t-shirts for the Schomburg that say just that. Questions, not comments, don't play me. But this is a moment, I'm the cool uncle. This is the moment when you could have a comment, a short one. Because sometimes you're not asking a question. So get it out now. Get it out now. You're part of the panel. Something short at those microphones. But before we do that, let's just take a moment to thank everyone who's been on the stage and in these seats and in this ether today, including Jimmy himself, creating this beautiful spirit, this beautiful feeling that feels to me like something that could actually make something happen. It feels like that to me. I hope it does to you. But first, let's just take a breath together, breathing in and breathing out. I don't know about you, it makes me feel a little more settled just to breathe. I just want to do it one more again. Breathing in and out. What is a thing of beauty if not us? So we'll begin. This may be a Schomburg Center historic moment when you ask people to come to the mic somebody take a picture of this. So now we know what it is. If you tell people they can make comments, and you don't have to try to make your a comment into a question, please, thank you, family.
Thank you. I just want to invoke the name Diana Sands.
Yes.
Because most of us knew her from her role in, I'm blanking on the name of the film, Raisin in the Sun, that's right. But Diana Sands was the main actress in Blues for Mr. Charlie on Broadway. And I wanted to hear more about Julian Happersberger, his relationship with Jimmy, his first love, who really made it possible for him to write Go Tell It on the Mountain. But in a moment of extreme closetedness, he went and married Diana Sands, and it broke Jimmy's heart. By the way, I presented at the James Baldwin conference in the south of France, so I had to do all of this research on him and his life. And we spoke of his being taken too soon because of the cancer in his esophagus. But Diana Sands was taken at 39. And that marriage just lasted for like a couple of years. So as a sister who really struggled, and I think just didn't receive the amount of praise that she deserved. So Diana, I praise you.
Nina, thank you for bringing that up. I really want to celebrate this correction. I mean, if you watch the film, you might think that Lucienne and Baldwin were like this. They had a tumultuous, quote-unquote, relationship. He's a straight man. Closeted might be a word, but he was married to a man and married to Diana Sands. He didn't go to their wedding, as you know. Baldwin didn't. He disappeared because he was heartbroken. So that cheeky man on the film, who's taking credit for almost everything, I was there, we were in love. You know, he was a closet case, as you said, but also was married only to women. He functioned intermittently as Baldwin's secretary, as a man Friday, but let's be clear. Compilation, I'm not so sure. I'm just gonna put it out there right now because folks like to pretend, right? And I really appreciate what you said. Thank you so much.
Clearly, I don't know what the prompt was, but
But here we are.
but here we are. I see someone going to the mic. Hopefully, it'll get clearer. Thank you.
Oh, yes, it will get very clear. I'm grateful to be I'm grateful for the vision of Arturo Schomburg. I'm grateful for the administration and the good people who keep this a place of healing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to call a name? No other names? Call it from your seat.
Ari Allen, Novella Ford.
Oh, we're alive. Oh, we're talking about live people? Okay. Well, I want to call out the names of my grandmothers, Dolores and Christine, and my mom, Leanne. I want to call out, as as a group, the Women of Ward Memorial AME Church in Washington, D.C. And the reason why I say that is because there's been a lot of conversation today about the way in which Baldwin valued and wanted to impart to a next generation, sort of passing the baton, right? And ensuring that they were equipped to carry on both movement work, legacy work, if you will. And I know what it means to have been in a church with grown folks and adults, but they cared about what you had to say as a child, right? They didn't look at you as something that needed to be moved to the side, but rather looked you dead in your eye and held the attention that you were commanding of them, while also imparting such important knowledge to you, and also listening, maybe just because they wanted to be caring adults, and or because you had something to say. And I know that I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for that kind of eye on me that said, we care about what you have to say, and we care about who you will be in the world. So I lift all of those folks up. Karen.
I just first of all, thank you both and everyone here, because what I believe you make possible here at the Schomburg is one of the many quotations of James Baldwin that I love to cite. The one I didn't mention up on stage, I wanted to leave with you now, which is, he said this back in 1979 in an interview by the New York Times, and never said it on camera or we would have kept it in the film, but he said, if you can change the way someone sees reality, even by a millimeter, then you can change reality. And I do believe that happens in this room, in this building. And it happened here when Jimmy read every single book just around the corner.
Thank you. Well, before we get out of here, there is a wonderful reception that we have prepared for you all, but don't stand up in your seats just yet. I want to make sure that everybody plans on joining us tomorrow. How many people in this room are joining us tomorrow? Excellent, excellent. Tell a friend, bring a friend. You can also watch online. You can also revisit today's conversations online as well. I'm here to affirm that much of the collection that Karen Thorson was mentioning in terms of footage from the film that is both in the film and out of the film is available to be viewed in the Moving Image and Recorded Sound Division. So I feel like I always need to remind people we are a public archive. So all you need is your New York Public Library card to access it, perhaps an appointment for most of the divisions. But beyond the Baldwin collection and or things that you've heard here, we are a center that's filled with over 11 million items. And when you come and you see the exhibitions, you're only seeing and scratching the surface of that. But as you can see through a film like Karen's, it's not just research and writing that gets created by using the material that is here at the Schomburg Center. It can also be film, as well as other kinds of creative pursuits. Now, using this film as a jumping off point as well, in the exhibition, you can see, of course, a copy of the eulogy that was printed that was given by Mary Baraka. But if you go onto the touch screens that are also in that room, we have digitized each page of the eulogy. So if you wanted to read the whole thing all over again, you could. Karen also mentioned the program. Well, we have digitized the program as well. And again, on those screens, you can look at that. So when you come to an exhibition, we hope that we impart information to you via the didactics that will tell you something in addition to what you're seeing, but also sometimes just seeing that the objects are here and what other kinds of objects should you be valuing in your own life. That will help to tell a story. Oftentimes people think that we collect only prominent figures, but the truth of the matter is history is told by everyday people all the time, and what is kept by everyday people. So make sure that you are valuing things in your own home, in your family's home, in the homes of people that you may be caretakers of, because you never know what part of history you are holding on to that is going to help a next generation of scholars, of individuals, of people who just want to know what was happening in the neighborhood. So I want to make sure that you utilize that resource. The last thing that I will mention is I am grateful for a collaborator like Dr. Allen, who just had a birthday. Can we all wish Dr. Allen a happy birthday? Another happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday. It has been incredible to live here in Harlem and to create a kind of community that exists now. So when I see Baldwin with Chinua Achebe or Medgar Evers or many other activists and scholars and writers and creatives, I think, oh, I get to be with my generation of people who are like that. So value the circles that you are in. Right? Love up on them because you never know the ways in which they are impacting the world and who might be helping you move into a politic that is even stronger and more aligned with the principles that you see yourself with. Thank you so much to every single person who was on this stage today, as well as everyone who was in the audience as well. And we look forward to seeing you mañana. With that, go well, go in peace.